understanding that there is a plan A, but for plan A, there's also a plan B case. So that's kind of what our youth structure does. It kind of helps develop their and mature them as future leaders. And that was one of the things that I didn't have, when I first got promoted. I remember somebody threw a set of keys at me and a clipboard and said, "Okay, you're in charge, go do your thing." And I'm like, what do I do? And they're like, "Well, just do." He goes, "Didn't you have a sergeant before?" "Yeah." "Just do what he did." And I'm like, "I don't want to do what he did. That guy was insane. Like, hell no." And they're like, "Well, then figure it out." Well, a lot of growing up in leadership was done through, trial and error. There's things that I did that I'm not proud of, but I learned from those mistakes. And now we're trying to educate the future leaders of tomorrow on those mistakes and showing them, look, you got to think out the process. You got to find a mentor. You got to do this. You got to do that in order to get where you want to go. So that's what the leadership development program does. And it's been pretty successful.
That's awesome. Now have you seen it kind of in any individuals, kind of their mindset alter and change because of what pandemic has done to them or around them?
Well, it's funny that you say that, because when the pandemic hit, I was a state director for that state agency in Oklahoma. And, when I first got there in 2018, I had talked about, everybody's like, how are you going to do a training police academy online? Because you got to remember, in Oklahoma, we have one training academy for police officers. They all got to come to this academy and spend 15 weeks with us while we train them to become police officers. Well, that's pretty expensive, especially when you're a community that doesn't have the money to send somebody to an academy and put them through all of this, right? But that's the way we do it at that state. So I kind of came up with the idea of going virtual with a virtual academy and going online back in 2018. And everybody thought I was insane. They're like, how can you provide police training online? Well, I'm not going to show you how to shoot online. I'm not going to show you how to drive a car online, obviously, right? But the theory-based material, domestic violence, the DWI laws, policing concepts and theories, all of that can be, legal updates, all of that can be done through the internet, right? And everybody thought I was crazy. Well, I decided that I was going to move forward with it anyways. We started developing the courses. We had everything on the side, just getting ready to launch at some point. Well, then the pandemic hit and we had to shut down the academy. And of course, you shut down the academy. We were in the middle of an academy. We had already done all the physicals, all the stuff that you had to do in person, like the driving, the shooting and stuff like that. And the governor's like, how are we going to get these officers trained? And I said, with a virtual academy, this is what we're going to do. And they're like, great. That's a great idea. How long is it going to take you to get it up and running? 5 minutes. What? We had everything ready. We had everything ready to go. So all we did is we issued everybody access to our Canvas. We launched it, sent it out, and to this day, they're still doing virtual online training on the theory-based portion of it. So what I think is that the pandemic was great because it forced outdated horses to rely on technology and use it and realize the power of technology. Well, technology, does fail every once in a while, but whoever thought that in life person training or education was going to fail, and it failed big and miserably with the pandemic hit. But you didn't see, traditional universities like that are not traditional, that are traditional online universities. They didn't skip a beat. University of Phoenix, Capella, they're like, what are you talking about? This is our whole platform, Yet, I teach for the University of Texas at El Paso. I'm a lecturer there, and they went into a panic. They're like, how are we going to put this stuff out? And, and through trial and error, they were, putting things online and stuff like that. But when you have an outside the box thinker, those are the type of people that you should cherish and nurture and build, because you never know when they're going to get you out of a bind. I mean, we were the first law enforcement academy to go virtual in the entire country, and everybody followed our model. So, I think that's how the pandemic has changed things. It actually allowed outside the box thinkers to flourish and come to the forefront instead of being laughed at and looked at as, second-rate individuals.
Right. Because they looked at you like, no, it's not going to happen. And look, you had it ready to go. Didn't even think about anybody else doing your thing.
That was funny, though, because I remember having some legislators They're like, oh, you believe the nerve of that guy from Texas? He thinks he's going to put us online. What is he, stupid? Oh, but as soon as the pandemic hit, and they're like, oh, we always knew he could do it. He had a great idea. I'm like,
yeah. Yeah, that's what it goes. Yeah. You believed in me. Cool. I didn't pay you any mind anyway.
So that was, that's kind of how that pandemic really helped, people with outside the mind thinking process.
Nice. Rich, you can just even add it to, like you said, you guys do talks about like, hey, this is what happened to me. I was outside of the box and they didn't pay me any mind. And look, when they needed it, they knew exactly who to come to.
Well, my reputation, I've been a chief of police twice. I've been a state director, and a lot of the times I'm when I've applied for other positions, I was recently one of the finalists for a major city in the United States. And I got pulled aside by the city manager and he says, we would love to hire you. However, you're just the right guy at the wrong time. And I started laughing. He's like, what's so funny? I said, you know how many times I have heard that? I said, do you know how many times I have been told you're the right guy at the wrong time? And it's because I'm a visionary. My ideas, my concepts of how we're going to get there and how we're going to get there, you hear them. And yeah, they're a little unorthodox because they've never been tried or tested. They've never been done. Well, and I shouldn't say never been tried or tested because I've done them. I've seen them work, but, people tend to stick with what they know. This is tried and tested and it's worked over and over. Well, no, it hasn't worked over and over because you're still in the same boat you were 5 years ago. And I'll just give you a little bit of what I'm saying is this major city is under a federal police decree. Basically, what that means is that their police agency is being overseen by the U.S. federal government, by the Justice Department. And they've been under this decree for the last 13 years. And in the past 13 years, they've had 6 different chiefs. And those 6 different chiefs have always come internally. And the guy that beat me out for the job was the assistant chief to the police chief that was there that left. So he was the assistant chief who's been with the department for over 30 years. But their whole reason for getting a new chief is because they wanted new vision, new direction, and wanted us to get out of the dissent decree. So what did they do? They hired the guy that's already been there for 20 somewhat years.
Same vision, kind of.
So yeah, man, and basically he's like, you know what? You're just you're the right guy at the wrong time. So that's kind of my tagline. I go around, I think I want to get some merch made up. Right guy, wrong time.
See, that does. Nice. All right. So I know people always ask you what was the worst thing you've had to deal with as a police chief. But I'm going to ask you, what was the funniest thing that you had to deal with being a police chief?
There's a lot of funny stories. And it's kind of hard to explain sometimes because you actually have to be there, because if you're not actually seeing it, it's not as funny when I tell the story. There was, and this one always comes to mind just because it was funny. But you kind of had to be there. So I was a police officer at the time, and we pulled over this guy for DWI, and we stopped him as we start talking to him, and we're like, dude, you're swerving all over the place. And he's like, it's because Bugs Bunny. And we're like, Bugs Bunny? Yeah, Bugs Bunny. And he starts hopping around. And we're like, hey, hold on, bro. And he's like, no, vroom, Bugs Bunny. And we're like, what is it? So anyway, we get him down to the station. And we're talking to him. And he's just keeps talking about Bugs Bunny, and he keeps hopping. And I think this guy's on something else other than just alcohol. So my partner, what does he decide to do? He goes to the back and pulls out the McGruff head from the dog McGruff, our mascot. And he walks over to the holding cell and he taps on it. And the guy's like, oh, big dog, big brown dog. He starts talking about the big brown dog and Bugs Bunny, and he's just going off all crazy. We get him to the judge. So he starts telling the judge is like, why are you drinking and driving? And he's like, it's because I was driving and Bugs Bunny ran across and I swerved so I wouldn't hit Bugs Bunny. And then next thing you know, a big brown dog comes out, and it was just funny. You really had to be there to get the essence, because I'm not doing it any justice. But that story just stands out on me just because, that day, we were having a rough day. We were very busy that night, and this guy basically took us out of the field. Yeah, he was drunk and stuff like that, but he helped us kind of relax, because God knows, had we not had that call and we had gone to another call, which might have been a whole different situation, the type of day that we were having already might have turned out to have been a pretty bad situation for not only us, but for the individuals, because we're human, and we see a lot of things, and after a lot of frustration, you kind of tend to make mistakes. So, and it was just kind of funny because he helped me and my partner relax. He was in jail, but he was laughing. He thought it was hilarious because at least he didn't kill Bugs Bunny. Then he goes to the judge, and he had the judge laughing. So it was kind of a good day, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it's kind of like what you and your partner kind of needed at that moment to kind of release and be like, let's get a little bit of a laugh, I guess, at this Bugs Bunny situation. Yeah,
it was just weird. And like I said, you had to have been there to actually see it and had to kind of know the backstory. And to this day, the judge, well, he's retired, but I see him occasionally, and we'll see each other, and it's like Bugs Bunny, and and we started laughing. Everyone's like, "The hell's wrong with you guys?" That's like funny, man.
That's cool. Now, so how can people reach out to you to be a part of the program, all the things that you have to offer?
Yeah, so if you go to leadingthroughadversity.com, we have a contact us form there. My email's on there, our phone number's on there. And, it's a leadership development program. It's really good for the youth. We're getting ready to start a new round of mentoring here in July. We have a current class that's graduating here in the next 3 or 4 weeks. They get a certificate and stuff like that, and then they continue to move on with some expert mentoring and stuff. We have Leading Through Adversity is made up of former CEOs, police chiefs, people in the C-level executive branch who have been there, seen it, done it, experienced it, and are willing to talk about how not to make the same mistakes that we did, so you can continue to move forward. So leadingthroughadversity.com, you'll find everything there as how to contact us and prices and all that good stuff.
Sounds great. Awesome. Well, thank you, Jesus, for coming on, chatting with me real quick. I hope you enjoyed it. I enjoyed it.
Oh, no, I had a blast. Thank you. I love coming on to shows where they let us talk about, because I think that's one of the things that's missing. I mean, leadership is now in crisis. We're kind of, and I know you said you don't like talking about politics, and yet that's kind of like what I did, was kind of turn it into a political show. But basically what we're doing is that we need help in the leadership ranks. We need people to not be afraid of being a leader because of perception. And unfortunately, the word leadership has been diluted so much that, people's perception of what leadership should be is basically more based on what benefits me. What benefits me if I put that person in charge, as opposed to what benefits us all if we put that person in charge.
Mm-hmm. And you change it every day. What benefits all, not just you. Everyone makes leaders their way. I make leaders through the creative outlets, and Jesus makes leaders through the force. And yes, I know that kind of sounds like a Star Wars reference, but it's not supposed to be a Star Wars reference. He legitimately makes leaders using his experience in law enforcement as a former police chief, which is really cool. I'm your host, Rockshana. Today's guest was Jesus Campos. Be sure to tune in each week for a new episode. And remember, everything and anything goes. The sky is the limit. Music for the Things That Nature podcast is an original track by Jared Sacramento called Dosage.